Jake was just an ordinary human soldier. He was part of a peacekeeping mission on the planet Korath, a wild and untamed place known for its lush jungles and dangerous wildlife. His team was assigned to keep the peace between the human colonists and the alien species that lived there. Jake had been stationed here for months, doing the same routine day after day. But nothing had prepared him for what would happen that morning. It was a quiet day, the kind of day when Jake's mind started to wander. The sun was high in the sky, casting shadows through the thick trees. His boots crunched softly on the ground as he walked along the path, rifle in hand, his mind not fully on the mission. He had learned to tune out the usual sounds of the jungle, the chirping of strange insects, the rustling of leaves, the calls of unseen creatures. Everything seemed calm, almost too calm. That's when he heard it. A soft thud, followed by a cry. It was faint, almost like a whisper in the wind, but it was enough to catch Jake's attention. He paused, listening carefully. The sound had come from somewhere ahead, deeper into the jungle. His instincts kicked in, and he immediately moved in the direction of the noise. He couldn't explain why, but something told him that this wasn't just another animal. There was something different about it. Jake pushed through the thick underbrush, his heart beginning to race. He wasn't sure what he was looking for, but his training told him to investigate any unusual sounds. As he moved deeper, he saw movement ahead, a blur of color, something that didn't belong in the forest. When he finally broke through a thicket of trees, he stopped dead in his tracks. There, lying on the ground, was a figure, a woman, an alien woman. She was unlike any human he had ever seen. Her skin was a soft, shimmering blue, and her long silver hair seemed to glow in the dappled sunlight. Her clothes were unlike anything Jake could recognize, made from materials that shimmered like the night sky. She looked unconscious, her body twisted in an unnatural way from the fall. Jake's heart pounded in his chest. He had no idea who this woman was or how she had ended up here, but something in her presence pulled at him. She was injured, and it was clear that she needed help. Without thinking, Jake rushed forward, kneeling beside her. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked, his voice gentle as he gently touched her shoulder, trying to rouse her. The woman's eyes fluttered open, and she gasped for breath, staring up at Jake with wide, confused eyes. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air seemed thick with tension, as if the very moment was charged with something neither of them could understand. She blinked, her eyes flickering between confusion and recognition. Who are you?" she whispered, her voice soft but clear. Jake paused, unsure of how to answer. He had never seen anyone like her before. "I'm Jake," he said simply, offering a hand to help her up. "I'm with the human peacekeeping force. Are you hurt?" The alien woman hesitated for a moment before she slowly accepted his hand, letting him pull her to her feet. As he helped her up, a strange feeling washed over him, a sense that this moment was important, something beyond a simple rescue. Her face was still pale, but her expression softened as she steadied herself. She looked at him, her eyes locking with his. For a brief moment, Jake felt as if he was the one who had fallen, trapped in her gaze. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice carrying an otherworldly melody. She looked around as if trying to remember how she had ended up here. Jake watched the alien woman carefully as she stood, still unsteady on her feet. She was taller than him, with a graceful elegance that reminded him of something ancient and powerful. Her blue skin shimmered in the sunlight, and her long silver hair flowed down her back like a waterfall. But it wasn't just her appearance that caught Jake off guard. It was the strange feeling she gave him, like she was someone important, someone special. She looked around, her gaze sweeping over the trees and the path they had just come down. It seemed like she was trying to make sense of everything, as if waking up from a dream. "You... don't belong here, do you?" Jake asked, his voice gentle, but filled with curiosity. The woman turned her eyes back to him, studying him closely. "I'm not sure," she replied, her voice soft but firm. I was not supposed to be here." Jake furrowed his brow. "Not supposed to be here, you mean? This planet?" She shook her head slowly, almost as if trying to make sense of something that didn't fit. Not here with you. It's not with humans. Jake was confused. He had never encountered an alien who didn't want to interact with humans. Korath was home to many species, and while humans weren't always welcome everywhere, they had made allies here. He thought he knew the rules, but this woman, there was something different about her. Why wouldn't you be supposed to be with humans? He asked, his voice almost a whisper, as if he was afraid to speak too loudly and break the fragile moment between them. The woman seemed to hesitate. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. It was like there was something she wanted to say, but couldn't. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I am Zayla, princess of the Valorian people. You should not have touched me. Jake blinked, stunned. Princess. She nodded, looking at the ground. Yes, my people have strict rules. Humans are forbidden to touch me. ... or any of my kind. She looked up at him again, her eyes filled with something between sadness and worry. By touching me, you have broken our laws and the consequences. They are severe. Jake took a step back, feeling a wave of guilt wash over him. He hadn't meant to break any rules. He'd only wanted to help her. I didn't know. I thought you were just hurt. Zayla sighed, her shoulders drooping slightly. It is not your fault. But the laws of my people are ... ancient. My father, the king, would never forgive such an act. And the elders would demand punishment. Jake was confused and now felt even worse. I didn't mean to offend you. I just saw you fall and couldn't leave you there. Zayla's expression softened. She could see the sincerity in his eyes. I know, she said quietly. You were kind to me. But kindness is not enough to avoid the consequences of my people's rules. Jake didn't know what to say, had no idea that helping someone could get them in so much trouble. He shifted uncomfortably on his feet, unsure of how to make things right. Before he could speak, the sound of footsteps approached. Jake tensed, and Zayla's eyes quickly scanned the surrounding area, her posture stiffening. Within seconds, a group of armed Valorian guards emerged from the trees, their weapons gleaming in the sunlight. Princess Zayla, one of the guards called, bowing his head in respect. Are you injured? He noticed Jake standing beside her and narrowed his eyes. And who is this human? Zayla raised her hand, signaling to the guards to stop. She turned to face Jake, her gaze softer now. This human helped me when I fell. His name is Jake. The guard's eyes shifted between Zayla and Jake, clearly uncomfortable. You must return to the ship at once, princess. The council is awaiting you. Zayla didn't move immediately. She glanced at Jake, her eyes filled with uncertainty. I will come. But I need a moment alone with this human. The guards exchanged a brief look but nodded, stepping back to give them some space. Jake could feel the tension in the air, and he couldn't help but feel the weight of the situation. Zayla turned to face Jake, her expression conflicted. Jake, I am not sure what will happen now. My people are very strict. They may not understand why you helped me. ... I do not know how to explain it. Jake nodded, still feeling guilty, but also confused. I didn't mean to get you into trouble. I saw someone who needed help, and I did what I thought was right. Zayla's lips quirked into a small, appreciative smile. You are kind, but kindness cannot undo the laws of my people. Jake sighed, frustration bubbling up inside him. I didn't know there were such rules. Don't. As Jake walked alongside Zayla, the tension in the air grew thicker with each step. He still couldn't shake off the feeling that he had made a terrible mistake by helping her. The Valorian guards, who had stayed close behind, seemed to be watching him carefully, as if waiting for any sign that he would make another wrong move. He felt like an outsider, a stranger on this planet, even more so now that he had broken such an important law of their people. Zayla, on the other hand, walked with an air of grace, but Jake could see the quiet conflict in her eyes. She seemed torn, as if she was battling between her duty as a princess and something deeper, something that Jake didn't fully understand yet. As they reached a clearing, the royal ship, a massive and ornate craft, stood in front of them, sleek design glinting in the sunlight. This is where I must part ways with you, Zayla said quietly, turning to face him. Her voice was soft, almost melancholic. I have to return to my people. There will be consequences for what happened today, and I do not know what they will be. Jake looked at her, his heart sinking. I didn't mean to cause any trouble. I just wanted to. Help you? I had no idea. ... about the rules. Zayla nodded, her silver hair falling over her shoulder. You did not know, and that is why you acted as you did. But it does not change what has happened. My people have strict traditions. Contact with humans is forbidden, especially for a royal like me. The law cannot be ignored no matter how kind your intentions were. Jake was silent for a moment, struggling with the weight of her words.
Ow.
He had never felt so powerless before. He had done what he thought was right, and yet it felt like he had only made things worse. But as he looked into Zayla's eyes, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her than just the princess who was bound by her people's laws. He could see the burden she carried, the same burden he had seen in her gaze earlier. I'm sorry, he said finally, his voice quiet but sincere. I didn't mean to make things harder for you. Zayla gave him a faint smile, though it was laced with sadness. It is not your fault, Jake. The rules have been in place for centuries. My people, they would not understand. Before Jake could respond, the guards who had been following them stepped forward, their hands resting on the hilts of their weapons. The leader of the guards, a tall Valorian male with dark green skin and sharp features, bowed his head slightly. Princess. It is time to return to the council, the guard said, his voice low but firm. The council is expecting you. Zayla sighed, her shoulders sagging with the weight of her responsibility. I know, she said softly, her eyes meeting Jake's one last time. But I must go now. I have no choice. Jake nodded, though. He felt a growing sense of dread in his chest. Didn't want to leave things like this, not after everything that had happened. Wanted to stay and try to understand more about Zayla, about her people and their rules. He wanted to believe that there was more to her than just the princess who had to follow the law, I understand, Jake said quietly, forcing a smile, even though he didn't feel like smiling at all. But if there's anything I can do, ... Zayla shook her head gently. You've already done enough, Jake, more than you know. As she turned and began walking toward the royal ship, Jake couldn't help but feel a pang of disappointment. He had hoped to help her, but instead he had only made her situation more complicated. He stood there for a moment, watching as she disappeared into the ship, the heavy doors closing behind her. The sound of the ship's engines starting echoed through the clearing, signaling that she was leaving, taking her place among her people. Away from him, Jake's heart felt heavier than ever, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end. There was something about Zayla, something about... Days passed after Jake's encounter with Zayla, the weight of the royal laws, the consequences of his actions, and the uncertainty about what would happen next, all pressed heavily on him. But despite his growing guilt, Jake found himself unable to forget the alien princess, her soft silver eyes, her grace, and the sadness that seemed to surround her lingered in his thoughts. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had been a part of something important, something bigger than himself. Back at his base, life continued as usual, but Jake wasn't the same. His fellow soldiers noticed the change in him, though they couldn't quite put their finger on it. He was quieter now, more withdrawn, and his mind often seemed to wander. He couldn't help it. His thoughts kept drifting back to Zayla and her words. He had touched her once, something forbidden in her culture, and yet it felt like the beginning of something that couldn't be ignored then. One afternoon, Jake received an unexpected message on his device. The transmission was from Zayla, and it took him by surprise. He hadn't expected to hear from her again, not after what had happened. Jake, her voice came through, soft but clear. I know this is unexpected, but I need to speak with you. Jake's heart skipped a beat. It had been days since he last saw her, and he couldn't deny the rush of relief that came with hearing her voice again. Zayla. What's going on? Is everything okay? Jake replied, his voice a mix of concern and curiosity.
I do not know how to explain this, but I need your help. I need to see you, away from the eyes of my people, she said, her voice tinged.
With urgency, Jake's heart raced. What's going on? What kind of help do you need? There was a long pause before Zayla spoke again. "It's complicated. Please, meet me where we first met. I will explain everything then." Jake hesitated for a moment. There was no telling what kind of trouble this might bring him, but he couldn't ignore her. He had already helped her once, and it felt like there was no turning back now. Despite the risks, he agreed. "I'll be there," he said. Before the transmission ended, a sense of unease settled over Jake as he made his way back to the spot in the jungle where he had first encountered Zayla. The air was thick with the usual hum of life on Koritha, chirping of insects, the rustling of the trees, and the distant calls of strange creatures. It was peaceful, almost serene, but Jake's mind was anything but calm. He wasn't sure what was going to happen, but he knew one thing. It felt like his life was about to change. When he arrived at the clearing, Zayla was already there, standing in the same spot where she had fallen weeks ago. She was alone. Her usual guards nowhere in sight. Her blue skin shimmered in the moonlight, and her silver hair glowed faintly in the dark. She looked more regal than ever, yet there was something vulnerable about her tonight. Jake stepped into the clearing cautiously, his eyes never leaving her. "Zayla, what's going on? Why did you call me here?" Zayla turned to face him, her expression serious. "Jake, I don't have much time, and I need you to understand. What I'm about to tell you is dangerous. If my people find out I've spoken to you again, they will never forgive me." Jake's heart tightened in his chest. "What are you talking about? What's going on?" Thala took a deep breath before speaking again. "You have no idea what you've done by touching me that day. The law is clear, and I should have never allowed it, but ... She trailed off, looking down at the ground, her fingers nervously playing with the fabric of her robes. Jake waited, not sure what to say. The last thing he wanted to do was make things worse, but the mystery surrounding Zayla only deepened. "But what?" Jake asked gently. "But ... Zayla finally looked up at him, her eyes filled with a strange mix of fear and hope. "I do not agree with my people's laws. I never have. My father's rules are not my own. I was raised to follow them, but deep down, I've always felt there was more to life than just obedience to tradition." Jake didn't know what to say. He had always believed in following the rules and doing what was right by his people. But here, in this strange place, the rules felt ... different. Zayla's words made him question everything he had been taught about right and wrong. "What do you mean?" Jake asked, his voice quieter now, as if he were afraid to disturb the fragile conversation. "I've been told all my life that I am destined to rule, to carry on the legacy of my people. But I don't want to be a figurehead." The days following their secret meeting felt like a dream to Jake. Every moment he spent thinking about Zayla filled him with a strange mix of excitement and fear. He had never been in a situation like this before, where his actions had consequences. So far beyond his understanding, Zayla's words still echoed in his mind. "I want more." There was something about her a yearning, a desire for freedom that he could relate to. Yet he knew that the walls closing in around her were much bigger than anything he could imagine. Zayla had been cautious ever since that night. The guards had become more watchful, and the secrecy surrounding her actions had only intensified. It wasn't long before rumors started to spread among the Valorian people, whispers of the princess's rebellious attitude of her breaking the ancient law by speaking to Jake again began to circulate like wildfire. The tension was palpable, and Jake couldn't ignore the unease that followed him wherever he went. One evening, as Jake returned from his patrol, he was stopped by one of the senior officers, Captain Rodriguez. The captain's expression was serious, his eyes narrow with suspicion. "Jake, there's been talk. People have noticed your involvement with the Valorian princess," the captain said, his voice low but urgent. "The higher-ups are getting nervous. The Valorians are a powerful people, and we don't want to start any conflicts." Jake felt a lump form in his throat. He had been trying to keep his distance from Zayla, aware of the consequences of their interactions, but it seemed like trouble was finding its way to him no matter how hard he tried to avoid it. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," Jake replied, his voice tinged with frustration. "I just helped her when she fell. I didn't know there were rules about it." The captain gave him a hard look, his tone even more serious. "I know you didn't mean to, but now that you're involved, There's no going back. If the Valorians decide to take action, it could end badly for both of us. You need to be careful. You don't understand their ways." Jake's stomach twisted. He had thought that helping Zayla would be a simple act of kindness. Now it felt like he had stepped into something far more complicated than he could handle. Later, that night, as Jake lay in his bunk, his thoughts kept drifting back to Zayla. What was she doing? Was she truly safe? Couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something bad was going to happen. There was a storm coming, and it was headed straight for them both. The next morning, Jake received an unexpected message. It was from Zayla. "Meet me. The council is calling for me," the message said, brief and to the point. Jake's heart skipped a beat. He knew what that meant. Council summons was a serious matter, especially for someone as important as Zayla. He quickly made his way to the meeting spot, his mind racing with worry. He had no idea what to expect, but he knew that whatever it wasn't going to be good. When Jake arrived, Zayla was already waiting for him. She stood by the same tree where they had first met, her posture stiff with tension. The guards had stepped back, but their eyes never left her. Zayla looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "Jake," she said, her voice low, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. There are people in my court who are not happy with what has happened. They have accused me of breaking the law, of betraying my people, and now, ... they want me punished." Jake's stomach churned. Punished? What do you mean? What will they do to you?" Zayla's eyes darkened. "They want to lock me away. They want to control me, force me to follow their rules. They fear that I will become a threat to their power." Jake's heart raced. He couldn't let that happen to her. "Is there anything I can do?" he asked, his voice filled with urgency. Zayla hesitated for a moment before shaking her head. "I don't know, but I cannot stay here any longer. If I stay, they will use me as an example to show everyone that breaking the law will not be tolerated. I can't live like that. I need to leave." Jake's mind raced. He couldn't let her go alone. He knew that much. The situation had grown far beyond what either of them had anticipated. But now, it wasn't just about helping Zayla anymore. It was about keeping her safe from forces much stronger than him. "If you need to leave, I'll help you, Jake," said, determination hardening in his voice. "You don't have to face this alone." Zayla looked at him, her expression softening. "Thank you, Jake. I didn't think anyone would understand. I didn't think I could trust anyone. ... You've shown me that not all humans are the same." Jake's heart swelled with a mix of relief and admiration. He'd been worried that helping. The footsteps grew louder, and Jake's heart pounded in his chest. He knew that time was running out. Zayla's plan to leave the Valorian city was now more urgent than ever, and they couldn't afford to be caught. The guards, who had been watching them from a distance, were moving closer. Jake could hear the click of their boots on the ground, the sound of authority and danger. Zayla's eyes flicked towards him, filled with fear and determination. "There. Coming," she whispered. "We don't have much time." Shh. Jake's mind raced. There was no turning back now. Zayla was right. If they didn't act fast, they would both be trapped in a situation far worse than either of them could handle. Jake knew he had to make a choice, and it had to be now. They had no plan, no backup. Just the two of them, alone in the jungle, with an entire Valorian military force on their tail. "Zayla," Jake said urgently, "we have to go, now. Need to get to the ship. Our only chance is to leave before they reach us." Zayla nodded. Quickly, her face pale but resolute. "I know, but it's not going to be easy. The ship is heavily guarded, and they'll stop us before we even get close." Jake glanced over at the path leading into the jungle, the dense trees and thick underbrush, providing some cover. He wasn't sure where the ship was, but he knew they had to head in the opposite direction of the guards. He reached for Zayla's hand, and for a moment their fingers touched a brief silent reassurance. There was no going back. "We'll have to move fast," Jake said, his voice steady, despite the fear gripping his chest. "Follow me." Together, they dashed into the jungle, weaving between trees and bushes, sounds of the Valorian soldiers growing louder behind them. Zayla's footfalls were light, but there was a quiet urgency to her movements that mirrored Jake's own. Her silver hair flew behind her like a comet tail, and her eyes, usually filled with royal calm, were now sharp with focus. The jungle seemed to stretch on forever, the heavy foliage providing a mix of shelter and obstacles. Jake could barely keep track of which direction they were heading, but he didn't dare stop. The wind rustled through the trees. The distant calls of jungle creatures seemed to mock their desperate run. After what felt like an eternity, Jake spotted a clearing up ahead. He recognized the path leading to the river that flowed out of the Valorian city and was used by the ships to navigate between the islands. It was their best chance. They could use the river to escape. But just as they were about to reach the clearing, a shout rang out from behind them. "Stop! You are under arrest by order of the Valorian Council." The voice was harsh, commanding, and unmistakably filled with authority. Jake's pulse raced. He knew they were getting too close to the river. If they didn't make it there in time, they would be caught. He could hear the sounds of more soldiers coming their way, their boots crushing the underbrush as they advanced. "Zayla, hurry," Jake urged, his voice sharp with panic. But Zayla, to his surprise, didn't run faster. She slowed down. Feet still moving, but with more purpose. She turned to face Jake, her expression calm but firm. "Jake, stop." Her voice was clear and steady. "We can't keep running like this. I have to face them." Jake stopped in his tracks, staring at her in disbelief. "What are you talking about? We can't let them capture us. We have no choice." Zayla shook her head, her silver hair catching the light as she did. "You don't understand? If I keep running, it will only make things worse. I need to face my people. I have to show them that I'm not afraid to stand up for what I believe in." Jake's heart sank. "But they'll punish you, Zayla. You know what they'll do? Can't. Just ... give up." Zayla's eyes softened, and she stepped closer to him, placing a hand on his arm. "I can't ask you to risk your life for me anymore. You've already done more than anyone could ever expect. But this ... this is my battle now." Jake felt a deep sense of helplessness wash over him. He had promised to protect her, to help her escape, but now it seemed like there was no way out. He had thought they could run away together, but Zayla's decision was final. She had chosen to face the consequences herself. "No," Jake said, his voice hoarse. "You don't have to do this alone. I'm staying with you." Zayla smiled, a bittersweet expression on her face. "I knew you would say that," she whispered. "But this is something I must do. I don't know what will happen after this, Jake, but whatever happens, I want you to know. I'm grateful for everything." Jake nodded, but inside he felt like he was losing her. He had tried so hard to help her, to make things right. But now he had to accept that she was making a choice he couldn't change. "All right," Jake said softly. "I'll be right here with you. But whatever happens, we face it together." Zayla took a deep breath and turned toward the clearing. "Let's go," she said, her voice resolute. They began to walk toward the sound of the soldiers closing. With every step, Jake felt the weight of the situation grow heavier. He didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was clear. They were about to face the unknown together. As they reached the clearing, the soldiers appeared, forming a tight circle around them. The leader of the Valorian guards stepped forward, his face a mask of authority and anger. "Princess Zayla, you are under arrest for breaking the laws of our people." Zayla stood tall, meeting the guard's gaze with unflinching courage. "I stand by my decision," she said calmly, "and I will face whatever consequences come. But I will not be controlled anymore." Jake stood beside her, ready to support her no matter what happened next. Together, they prepared for whatever the future held.